Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to episode 13, lucky number 13, to Inevitable Wealth. I am Jackie Petitholm, and I'm here with Julian. Julian, say hello to the people.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, instead of doing something heavier and more divisive like politics, we were going to talk about 20 common myths around financial planning, investing, personal finance, insurance, or estate planning. So perfect for diving into in a podcast episode.
Yeah, so there's 20 here. I don't know if we're gonna get through all of them, but if not, we'll just break this up. But let's just dive right in, shall we, Julian?
Absolutely. So first, I'll give you the first one. I'm too young to start investing. What's your take?
False, to quote Dwight. The earlier you invest, the better for you, right? I think that's a kind of like a no-brainer. But we do get that a lot, actually, right?
Exactly. And I think you look at it two ways. So financially, the earlier you invest, the more you have time for your money to compound. And two, just like anything in life, practice makes perfect. So you learn the skills, you develop the skills. Our most successful families that we serve didn't just wake up at age 60 and decide to start that day, right? They started way before that, building out the skill, also allowing their money to compound.
Excellent point. Yeah. And if anyone ever listens to anything we ever say, right, it's time in the market. So more time in the market. Obviously, if you're invested responsibly and right, diversified, all that fun stuff, uh, you should be successful. So yeah, start yesterday if you can.
Exactly. And you're going to make a mistake at some point. So you might as well, if you're doing it yourself at least, so you might as well do it at age 20. If you lose 5% of your portfolio, 10% of your portfolio, it's $100 instead of 100,000.
Very fair point. Number two, financial planning is only for the wealthy, Julian.
How else do you become wealthy if you're not, if you're not sort of making sure your money works for you? It's which came first, the chicken or the egg. Uh, there's no, it's all synonymous.
And also, I dare say, if you're not wealthy, perhaps you might need financial planning a little bit more, right? If you need to learn how to build wealth and put in all of those good habits to kind of get you where you need to be.
Exactly. Is exercise only for the fit? It's a good tool for anyone at any stage of the game, and the only way you get from point A to point B is by putting it into practice.
Number three, estate planning is only necessary if you're old or have a lot of money.
Absolutely not. If there's one thing that unfortunately everybody does, is everybody dies, and you want to make sure that it goes as seamlessly as possible to who you'd like it to go to, whether it's charity of your choice. If you love Penn State, maybe it goes Penn State Alumni Association or something. I do not love Penn State. Or maybe ideally your children and dependents, to make sure it's smooth, seamless, and optimal for your family. What would you add to that?
I don't remember who said it, but they said the only thing that is guaranteed in life is death and taxes. And estate planning is what addresses both of those. So if you have someone you care about or something you care about, always have an estate plan. Because if you don't, right, the government has one for you, and then the government decides where it goes. So, um, yeah, estate planning. You got something or someone you care about, you should definitely look into it. And then again, if you have a family, young kids, get a will yesterday.
Exactly. And with that, right, number four, life insurance is only for people with dependents. What's your take on that?
Oh yeah. So life insurance is for anyone who relies on your income. So it may not be a dependent, it might be a spouse, or it might just be if you have your parents who co-signed your student loan and it's a hefty amount of money and they'll be left with it, unfortunately, if you were to pass early. So it's really about who will be impacted if your income goes away.
Exactly. So if you and your spouse have a mortgage, right, and maybe one covers 20% of that, right? life insurance should be in place to offset that if anything were to happen. Most of the time, like you said about the student loan component, if you are younger, it's very cheap, very cost effective for you to get in these types of situations, whether that's through this time of year when you can do it right through work, or you were looking for a more permanent solution like a term life type situation.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, if you need life insurance, I'd say the work benefits is always easy. It's like pennies on the dollar. It'll be the most cost effective way to get insurance anywhere.
Absolutely. And so that's something our friend Larry did yesterday, and it's easy to sign up. There's no underwriting typically if it's about 8 times your salary, I believe is the limit. So very, very much easy and optimal to do. Number five, and this is something that is far uh, more often said by men than women. Men tend to be less logical, less planning oriented, as we all are well aware. Retirement planning isn't necessary if you plan to work forever. So a lot of times be speaking to the husband, and he'll be saying, I don't need that. I'm just gonna work until I die. A good accent of the
I don't know what that accent was, but we have received direct quotes like, "Yeah, they're just gonna find me dead at my desk," which I'm like, "Wow, dude!" But hey, that's how you want to live. So, obviously, we disagree. We believe like planning is essential to everything, and what we like to do with folks that love their job, either they run a business or they're just workaholics, is we like to build a date where it's like, hey, listen, when you get to this point, you're only working because you want to, not because you have to. And some of the folks find that they enjoy their job better because they know they can leave any minute. We've seen that with, we work a lot of folks that are at Exelon, and a couple years back, Exelon split, into Constellation, and a lot of guys are like, you know what, just gonna I'm just gonna exit stage left if you don't mind. So, yeah, retirement planning is always important. Or what if just something happens, right? You can't work anymore. You get, sometimes our bodies kind of age faster than our minds. So, it's always important. What's the next question here, Julie?
um I should pay off all of my debt before I start saving or investing.
So I have a philosophy on this. I don't know how you feel, but obviously no, right? Pay your bills, everyone, right? Don't ruin your credit, right? You have obligations, but um, my opinion is you should always pay yourself first, right? So when you create that spending plan, the mortgage or the rent, what have you, like your name should be a line item of saving for your future, your emergency fund, or long-term goals. But what do you think about that, Julie?
Absolutely. So when you look at it, you want to make sure that you have an account that's a one-way street, meaning money goes in, it does not come out. When you're looking at saving versus investing, so much of it comes down to one, developing the skill, because no matter what age you are, even if you're putting away $10 a month, you want to develop that skill, work that muscle. But also, what is the interest rate of your debt? Because in some cases, it could be 0% financing. In some cases, it could be 28% credit card. And there's a very obviously huge difference between the two. So you want to know your numbers. My dad always says, know your numbers. So you want to know your numbers and be able to make confident decisions based off of that, and focus on that long-term component.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Because not all debt is created equal, right? Because some people might look at that and say, "Oh, I know a lot of folks who are in a rush to pay off their mortgage, right? And they have an antique mortgage, which is like a sub 3% mortgage." I'm like, don't pay that off first, right? Fill your other goals. Make sure you're well funded for retirement, whatever goals you have, because that is a really good interest rate. So that's one thing we always remind a lot of, we work with like some young professionals that have student loan debt and all that fun stuff. And if you wait to pay off all of your debt before you start saving, you're going to be, you know, on the other side of the hill, halfway through your career. So it's very important to make sure that you are saving, because at the end of the day, if you come up to retirement and you're short on cash, I can guarantee you your mortgage company's not going to send you a check. Your Visa card's not going to send you a check, right? Your student loan provider's not going to send you a check. So you got to make sure you're taking care of your financial goals as well.
Exactly. And a little off topic, what would you say is sort of the break point where it makes more sense to target the debt or save more for cash? Because we get that question a lot. Paying down your mortgage very rapidly when you have a 3% rate maybe doesn't make sense. But is there a timeline when you should really start to consider it or a number in mind?
That's a good question. And sometimes when you're looking at this, it becomes more of an art than a science. But I mean, I would dare say, even now we're in this kind of a new phase of mortgage interest rates. Um, if it robs you from securing your other financial goals, then I would take that to heavy consideration, right? So if there's someone we spoke with and they're like, yeah, I'm spending an extra $100 a month towards my mortgage because of the high interest rate. Like, yeah, sure. But then you're not on track for retirement, right? So, um, you know, again, it really depends. Everyone's lives are complex, and but I always kind of are on the side of save for your goals first, get that emergency fund before we start aggressively paying down anything, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, saying it's more of an art than a science is absolutely right. Because it also you want to look at the market cycle. And if things are looking toppy, then maybe it's time to look more at the debt. Whereas if you're in an '08 or 2020 or 2022 type scenario where there's big drawdowns, that's when there can be a lot more value, certainly.
Yeah, that's a good point. As obviously there's just so many variables. It's never really a black and white answer, but it feels great. I've got a mortgage too, and I can't wait for the day I send my last payment. But at what cost, right? So next one, let me see here. I don't remember where we left off. Oh, you only need an emergency fund if you have a lot of financial responsibilities, Julian.
Yes, and that's not a yes acknowledgement. That's false. You definitely need an emergency fund regardless. And this comes up a lot more with younger individuals where they say, I don't need cash. I just put it all in the market or I put it all towards my next newly order or whatever it may be. But you do want to have it available because things do go wrong or things go right. You might get a new job in a different area and you have to essentially be able to move or make a change or buy a plane ticket. Little things that add up over time. So you absolutely need an emergency fund regardless. What's the recommendation for that, Jacky, roughly from the CFP board?
Per the CFP board, for those listening, so if you're a dual income household, it's 3 months of your fixed expenses, right? So that's things that you need to survive, not the fun, going out to dinner. And if you're a single income household, it's 6 months of expenses. I'd say we're probably pretty conservative with how we plan with our family. So we usually tell folks if they can get it to 6 month number anyway, just because we're in a different job market, right? The job cycle, if someone's looking for new work or if they've been laid off, we have some folks who've been looking for work for well over a year. So, upwards, more is better. And a emergency fund is really just a fire extinguisher for financial emergencies. So having a well padded emergency fund can go a long way.
Exactly. And you want to make sure every dollar you have is working for you. Um, but in our experience, I've found that a lot of folks get sucked up into, well, if I have 10,000 in cash and it's getting 3% instead of I could get 8, 9, 10 in the market, that really bothers them. But if you really just do the math on 10,000 in cash at the 5% difference or delta, 5% delta, but 5% difference, it's $500, right? It's not something that's going to be life changing for most of the folks we serve. So you want to make sure that the cost of not having the emergency fund doesn't significantly outweigh the cost of having it, because that's very reasonable. And you need it for when things go wrong. And if things go wrong and you don't have it, that problem really compounds. When I was a kid, we had our house flood twice through a pipe broke in the ceiling. And you can't just let that linger. You got to take care of that. It was raining in the kitchen, so you got to take care of those things. I mean,
Yeah, the key term is emergency in emergency fund, right? Because if it's planned, it's not emergency. And I would dare say too, if you put all that in investments or what have you, tax liability, right? If you got to sell stocks that's grown, or the flip side, you got to put on a credit card, and then what interest are you paying, right? So, yeah, an emergency fund, by the way, folks, is not accessible line of credit. It's cash money that you can touch. So, moving right along, you need to be a financial expert to invest in the stock market.
False. There's almost an inverse correlation to success at a certain point as an investor, where a lot of folks who are almost too smart, they really struggle because they focus so much on certain aspects that may not matter, or things that have changed over the years, like the appropriate price to earnings ratio of a stock has certainly changed over the past 20 years, especially as tech companies have come into play. No, you do not need to be a financial expert to invest, right? You want to keep it as simple as possible, and essentially look to optimize the portfolio and your investments. And a lot of that starts with how you save money each month, each quarter. What would you add there?
I mean, I would add, if we just look at the sheer numbers of retail investors and how many of them are not experts, right? If anyone saw that movie, Dumb Money, it was about the whole meme stock craze. Um, yeah, it shouldn't be for entertainment, right? Like they say, if you want to be entertained, get a dog, and that's how it should be. Your investments should be just kind of boring. Have a professional if you need professional, but yeah, you shouldn't be an expert. I dare say probably makes you overanalyze, make bigger mistakes.
Exactly.
So,
And
go ahead.
looking at
Yeah.
it, if you ever read Psychology of Money, it's one of my favorite books. I know Jackie enjoys it as well. There's a great chapter on a janitor in the South. He, of course, wasn't making hundreds of thousands of dollars, but what he was doing is taking a little bit of each paycheck and putting it into the market. And he was buying stocks he was buying stock in companies that he knew, was familiar with, like your General Electrics, like your Procter and Gambles and whatnot. And at the end of the chapter, passes away. He has $8 million, right? So that's hard for anybody to do, let alone a janitor who is in the South, where the income's not necessarily as high as it could be if he was in high finance in New York. And it was just that consistent buying, spending within your means, and keeping it really, really simple. So intellect in this case, right, when we talk about being a financial expert, is about knowing what you know and really trying to keep it as simple as possible for you.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And also, I would say, speaking of financial experts, I'm not going to call out any TV personalities or anything, but when we look at all the analysts out there that are, I mean, their full-time job is to follow 3 to 5 companies and make these like price projections. And the Goldman Sachs and the Morgan Stanleys of the world that come out with all these projections, and they are wrong all the time. And it is their job. You go to work 40 hours a week plus, they're spending 56 hours a week plus, and they're wrong consistently. So, yeah,
Everybody forgets. It's like when the Federal Reserve Board said they'd have what, four rate hikes in 2022, and they ended up with 24.
Yeah.
So even those in control can't see the future. The only one that can, I think, is Nancy Pelosi. She's the best trader on earth. But other than
She's so
that,
good. She's so good.
maybe because she's pulling the levers. But other than that, there's certainly a lot of unknowns out there, and you want to keep it as simple as possible for yourself.
All right. So next is, this is great. If I start investing, I'm guaranteed to make a lot of money. What do you think about that one, Julie?
It's a lot to unpack. When you go in with that mindset, it's generally going to go poorly.
Yeah. Also, like the number one rule about investing, that is, it's not guaranteed, right? So it's pretty funny.
Any investment paper you read, at the bottom, it says in small letters, this is not guaranteed. Past performance is not indicative of future results. But everybody, we talk to a lot of younger folks too, and they're looking at the next big thing, and hope is what keeps it going. Um, but if you bet the house on some obscure stock, you better watch out, because there's a lot of Pan Ams, there are a lot of Sears Company, right? There's a lot of General Electric. It's a tough one. Um, some still in business, some not, but either way, all would have been catastrophic to your plan if you went in trying to make a lot of money on individual stocks.
You know what? There is a guarantee, Julian. This is contrarian. This is a guarantee. If you can buy something like an index and promise, and it's for long term, and you promise yourself you're not going to touch it, you're not going to freak out when the market pulls back and sell it. Yeah, you're actually guaranteed to do really well over a long term in a disciplined strand. But the guarantee is if the person can behaviorally not touch it. So like that's the only guarantee. Buy something like an index and don't touch it for 20 years.
Correct. And from a compliance perspective, it is not guaranteed. But from a wisdom long term investment perspective, absolutely can make a lot of sense. There's actually a study out there that Fidelity did a couple years back. It's hard to find at this point. It seems like it's been erased from the internet. But they looked at the best performing investors on their platform. And do you know what they all had in common when they looked back on a 20-year time span? Who was the best of what they were looking?
They forgot that they had that investment, probably.
Exactly. They forgot their password. They didn't log in, right? So they consistently invested and just didn't touch it. So it wasn't somebody with inside information or anything like that. Just folks who focused on their day-to-day life and let the rest kind of grow off to the side.
Yeah, that's a good one. And this one, I think, kind of it says a 401k alone is enough for retirement.
It can be. It may not be. Everybody's different. If you're spending within your means and you're adding a reasonable amount to it, investing, have a good match, maybe. But I wouldn't. Nothing's guaranteed. What would you add?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, like this is like it really depends. Like if back to the early investor, if you're 18 and you're maxing out your 401k up into retirement and you have like low cost, it might be more than enough. Mm-hmm. But if you haven't been putting anything away and you're 64 and you just started, then it isn't. But it can be, it cannot be. It just depends on your plan.
Exactly. And even if you do have one, you don't necessarily want to be changing the investments regularly, but you do want to be evaluating the tax implications. Should I have, when I'm younger, a Roth 401k or a traditional 401k? As I get older, should I be making conversions at any point? And then as I am in my peak earning years between 45 and 65, it's more likely that I would want to be all in my traditional 401k. So you do want to manage the tax efficiency of how you're investing as you go through it.
Also, good points. So, been paying, keep an eye on the clock. We're about at 20 minutes. So, we're going to make this a two-part series. So, everyone who's been listening, thank you. Appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to send in questions because we had one or two questions that we'll address on part two. But yeah, Julian, anything to impart on the fine folks before we sign off?
No, that's it. Thanks for joining us. And we will await some questions and then work on a part two as we go.